Hey everybody, how you doing? I hope you had a good weekend. A lot to talk about today, so let's get it started.
Wake up, everybody. I just wanna start a new day. Remember what I say.
What's up, everybody? What's up? What's up? It is Monday, June 14th, 2021. This is Den City Tonight on a special time, 7 o'clock. We're starting today instead of our usual 8. I hope you remembered that and were able to join us. Hope you had a good weekend. It's nice and cool this weekend. It wasn't so crazy. The last couple of days been really hot. So it was a little nicer weekend. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. Today is an important day for me. We're going to be speaking to someone who I have a lot of respect for. I've known for a long time. And as we let this music drop a little bit so you can hear me a little better. Yeah, so like I said, today's an important show. And we are not going to dilly-dally today. I'm not going to get into a lot of other things beforehand because I want to make sure that we get all this information and we really have a good chance to let my next guest talk. This is the first guest that I'm having on season 2. And we're going to talk. Today's topic, really, we're talking about surviving trauma and learning to, I guess, recapture your spirit and what it is that makes you whole and the things that people go through. And today we're going to be speaking with the founder and CEO of Milagros Day Worldwide. Her name is Dawn Diaz. She is a great friend of mine. And without further delay, I'm going to bring her into this stream, and I hope you guys get some good information today. So, hey, Dawn, how you doing?
Hey Frank, I'm so happy to be here on Den City tonight.
Well, thank you so much. Your first guest of season 2. I can't believe it's season 2, episode 5, season 2.
Congratulations, it's a great show.
You. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. I have fun. I mean, it's not like I got a million people watching, but I got some people watching. I got some regulars, and it's pretty cool. So I wanted to bring you on today because the purpose for me having this outlet and this platform is to make sure that, we have a little fun, but also that we bring to light people that I think deserve to be, not that you're not recognized because you are known in what that you do. But people that I know, that I feel I want to bring on and talk about what it is that they do, because I'm so proud and, so honored to know someone that has done things that you've been doing.
Yeah, it's so true. Like, we don't need to go so far. Like, within our own community, we have amazing talents and really special and powerful people. So it's great that you're tapping into that.
Absolutely. I talked about your organization very briefly, Milagros Day Worldwide. Without me maybe misrepresenting what it is, what is Milagros Day and what does it mean to you in the community?
So Milagros Day Worldwide is my nonprofit organization that I started 10 years ago. And it has evolved the same way that the world is evolving, communities are evolving. We as human beings and as people and as spiritual beings are evolving, right? So the mission first started to support survivors of domestic violence. And as time went on, it really grew into just being a place for trauma survivors. And so that brings us 10 years fast forward to the campaign that we have going on right now, which is we are all survivors of something. So it's not even about what happened to you. It's about how you are taking that and changing your mindset so that you can be successful.
Absolutely. I mean, that's key. Surviving, like you said, we're all survivors of something. We're all survivors of some type of, trauma or just situation that we've had to go through. I want to go back a little bit because everybody has kind of like a backstory. and to understand how important it may have been for you to create this or to have this outlet. If you don't mind, I just want to go back a little bit and just talk about some
Let's
things.
go way back. Let's go all the way back.
Let's go all the way back. Your mom went through a long history of domestic abuse. In reading and doing my research on your organization, almost 10 years she went through that and then decided at some point that it was time to leave. Do you remember, you were young then, do you remember that? Is it vivid for you? Is it something that's kind of like a foggy memory? What does that, when I speak to that, what does that mean to you?
Well, so nothing happens in a vacuum.
Right,
Like now that I'm, almost 55 years old, I get to look back and look at my trajectory and look at all the places I've been, and they were not random. They were all part
right,
of a path. They were all
right,
part of like, this growth, right? And so when you're asking me what happened to my mom and how that affected me and do I
right,
remember it and how that impacts what I do today, absolutely. Because whether we know it or not, we're all operating from that place,
right,
right? We're all operating from those memories and those those traumas and those things that we saw, that we experienced, that we felt, that the decisions that we made when we were 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, right?
right.
And so when I was that age, those ages, I watched my mom being physically abused, like having broken nose, black eyes, missing teeth, like on a regular basis. And that changes how a child sees themselves in the world and
Right.
how they see the world being. And it changes what kind of decisions, what kind of choices they make as to who they are and what they're and how they're gonna be, right? So
Of course.
I remember when I was 5 years old, the first time that I saw my mom being hit, it completely changed my how that I saw that the world was not safe.
Okay. Yeah.
And
Okay.
yeah,
It you explain it so well in the sense that everything, obviously, when you, like you said, it doesn't happen in a vacuum. When you look back and you see how those instances and those situations have kind of molded to what you become. The reason why I kind of go back is that I know that there's people that may be going through that, maybe have a similar situation, and to see the progression of you've lived a couple of lives. You've had some serious chapters, that have gone
yes,
on. I
yes, that's
mean,
what I want to get into, and that's what my book is about. I've been wanting to write a book for probably the last 15 years,
right.
and I'm so close to it right now. Like it's all there. It's just
Right.
about me putting it down on paper.
So,
Because
okay,
like you said, I've lived so many lives.
you guys, unfortunately, your mom's makes a decision to leave that, but then she passes about 6 months after that, right, in a car
Mhm.
accident,
Yeah.
and it's almost like, wow, you make the decision to say I'm not going to go through this anymore, and then something tragic happens, and it's a whole nother element of, oh shit, like how do I now do I deal with this? You're 14, I believe, I'm not
Yep.
mistaken,
Yep.
and you and your brothers go into foster care.
Yep.
Um, and you still progress. I mean, I'm not going to ask you, what was it like in foster care. I mean, that's not the point of the conversation. The point is just that it's another step where when you think that, oh, okay, this is how my life's going now, and then something else changes, and you're like, oh, that's not how it's going now. Now this is how it's going, and then again,
Mhm.
um, as a late teenager, and this is where our connection is. I don't know. You were introduced to a organization called the City Volunteer Corps. For those that don't know, the City Volunteer Corps was a program in the 80s from then Mayor Ed Koch, that helped New York City kids where they were troubled, whether they were, some of them weren't in trouble. Some of them just wanted to do something different. And they took us and it took us upstate to learn team building. And then we were able to come back to the city and participate in different programs throughout the city for a year. At the end of the year, you could get a scholarship for school or you can get a cash disbursement. I explained that in like 20 seconds, and it's so much more than what I just explained. But that program, how were you introduced to that program, and how did it help in your development? Because I know for me, it was life changing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm glad that we're starting the discussion here because that was like the foundation of
Okay,
all of my community service, of my work ethic, and
right,
everything that made me a professional and made me have ambition and things like that. So
right,
absolutely, that program was absolutely amazing. And so, at 14 years old, my mom dies. We were living in Puerto Rico at the time, and I happened to be in New York on vacation. And so I came to New York on vacation and never left. Never went
okay,
back to Puerto Rico. Never went to my mother's funeral. You
wow,
know, because it was just like, okay, you know, the kids are here now. Let's just see where we can place them. Luckily, I was able to be placed with family so that I didn't have to go through the foster care system, even though I was in the system, but I was with family members,
gotcha,
which,
gotcha, okay,
as the girl, it was three
yeah,
boys and one girl. And as the girl, the family, at least was able to keep me from all of what happens
yeah,
to girls in the
was in
foster
the fourth
system,
system,
you
right,
know. And so from there, I remember I wanted to go to the High School of Performing Arts, right? Because I
okay,
remember watching Fame even in Puerto Rico, and that was so.
right,
When I came to New York, I was like, all right, well, if I'm going to school in New York, that's the school I want to go to, and and so I got there, and they were like, yeah, you were supposed to get here in 8th grade. You can't just show up here in 10th grade and, go to performing arts. So
right,
I ended up going to like the regular high school and just, even though I was like a really smart kid and a good kid, I started, getting into trouble,
as
not
we do,
going
I
to
know,
school, just doing the stuff that we do as teenagers. I always say like you hear about sex, drugs, and rock and roll. For us, it was sex, drugs, and hip hop, right?
yeah,
And freestyle music, right? so, so so that was the teenage years, and then at some point the CVC thing came up, and I think it may have been through my foster care agency
okay,
that like was overseeing me, because at that point I was already aging out of the foster care system.
right,
And then
okay,
it was like, okay, what do you do with these kids now? So many
right,
kids that go through the foster care system, all of a sudden now they're 17, 18, 19 years old, and what do you do with them?
yeah, nobody wants to
So
pick them up, nobody wants to deal with that, they're out of the
yeah,
system,
yeah.
they're
And
home, yeah,
so I ended up in CVC, and it was great. It was, we wore uniforms. We had to go
yeah,
out to
the
like,
red striped uniforms,
yeah,
yeah,
the gray. Yeah, I got pictures of it. I have pictures of us. Remember when
mhm.
we had this like huge gathering at the Staten Island
Staten
Ferry?
Island. It was the anniversary. We were all there on the boat and everything. I have
Yes,
pictures of that too.
I have pictures of that. That was insane. And it taught us community, it taught us service, it taught us responsibility. It taught us that we can make a difference. That,
Right.
and like they like had us doing all of these different projects throughout the city. I even ended up being able to travel with a different program because of them,
Well, you
doing
went
a
to Ireland,
student.
right?
Yeah, I
You went
went
to
to
Ireland,
Ireland, to
yeah.
Belfast, Ireland in the 80s, which at the time was worse than New York City.
Wow.
There was like wars and I
Right.
mean, just machine guns in the street. It was like real serious stuff. And they just sent New York kids out there because we could
I
handle
can
it.
handle it.
Yes, exactly. you know. But that all came through CVC, and I'll tell you, that program, the way that New York City is right now, like we need that program now. And actually,
Absolutely.
I'm telling you, the new mayor, whoever this new mayor is that comes in, Frank, I'm telling you right here, right now, live on the air, we
Okay.
gotta write a proposal
I'm with you because
and
I'm
get this program back in New York City. All
it
right.
was such a vital it was such a vital program in the sense that it brought so many different people of different backgrounds together, and it showed that you can accomplish something. And probably a lot of people who had not really done anything of meaning, in their youth. I mean, the people that I met, the senior citizens I met, the people that we fed, the visiting nurse service, the parks that we did over. I mean, it was an amazing thing, and it's so sad that it kind of just disappeared. But I will definitely, and I'm saying it on air, if that's something that we can do, that we will do. We'll write a proposal. I'll tell them, hey, I want my speech that I did up in at the camp. They had sent it to the mayor's office. That the graduation speech when we were up there that week, and I have a copy of that. And I'm like,
Wow.
people need to understand that service is important. People, the youth, they need something to strive for, to really take to heart. We have friends. We've been friends for over 30 years.
Yeah.
I have friends now, and things that it was so very hard to explain to people sometimes what that program meant to me. You almost couldn't put it into words unless you actually experienced it. But yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely agree.
Yeah. So from there, I mean, you said you had told me that you're still in touch with your leader, with your team leader.
Yeah, Mark is out in Idaho. He just moved. He was still living in the same place where we went. He invited us over to dinner one time. This guy invites all these kids, 17, 18-year-old kids that he's never met before, invites them to his house and has dinner with his wife. And he was there for years. And it took me almost 20 years to track him down again. I found him on Facebook, and we were like, oh my
Mm-hmm.
God. So he's moved out to Idaho, but he was a big part of my growing up.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, I without a doubt will not hesitate to say that program saved me in many, many ways.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. And my team leader also, Kenneth Adams, he's a very influential person in New York City. I've been following him, and I've actually met up with him twice since back then. So
Okay.
like I'm telling you, between
So
me,
let's do it.
you, and your team leader, and there is a Facebook group actually
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
CVC people. So we got to get this going
Yeah.
because
We need to speed
right
it
now
up.
shootings in New York City, the way kids are, it's
There's,
just
there's nothing to do.
yeah,
There's no programs. There's no after school programs. People don't play sports anymore. They're just out there existing.
yeah,
You know. So okay, we go CVC. I'm jumping ahead a little bit.
yeah,
You become a paramedic.
yep, yep,
How did that happen? What
yeah.
brought you to that?
Well, I'll tell you, once I put that CVC uniform on, I was like, all right, I need another uniform now, you know?
That's funny. 'Cause it kind of resembles that.
Yes, yes. So what happened was, I had family. Two of my uncles were EMTs in New
Mhm.
York City. And so I grew up watching them go to work and and it was interesting. Like paramedic work is fascinating,
Okay.
like to know that you're out there, you're on an ambulance, you're going into shootings and stabbings and delivering babies and car accidents and building collapses. It's exciting, right? And also it taps in what I didn't know, right? This is behind the scenes, this is underlying, but it
Okay.
taps in to your flight or fight response, right? It taps into your adrenaline. And
Right.
when you are a trauma survivor, when you have PTSD, that is the system that you operate on. You're
Right.
constantly on this flight or fight response. And so for me, it was second nature. It was so second nature for me to just be in the drama and the trauma and the death and the life or death and the, people getting stabbed and shot and killed, and, like, just, it was just so dramatic and so exciting. And
Right.
honestly, when I was first a paramedic, because you go from EMT to
Mhm.
paramedic. When I
Okay.
first became a paramedic, I couldn't believe that they were paying me to do this,
Wow.
because I loved it so much. The
Right.
the just the adrenaline junkie, like the adrenaline rush,
Right.
it just fed my soul. Like, it fed,
Wow.
like, just like, because especially as a paramedic, you're waking people up. You're actually being the one that is the bridge between life and death.
And death. Absolutely.
And so imagine, for a little kid that grew up in a home where they didn't know if their mother was going to die that night,
Right.
because there was plenty of times when I ran out of my home to the neighbor's house, banging on the door with no shoes on in the middle of the night, crying because I thought my mom was going to be killed. you know and then fast forward, now I'm the one that's stopping death. We actually used to have a jacket with the Grim Reaper on it, and it was
Right.
like like the Ghostbusters, but it was the Grim Reaper
The Grim
thing.
Reaper. Right. Okay.
Yes, and our tagline was, "We cheat death. We cheat death. Like, death, you ain't coming over here. We
Right.
stop
Right.
it. So, like, for that little girl that had no power, no control, no safety,
Right.
to fast forward and be the one in charge of
Mhm.
stopping death, that was just like a no-brainer.
So feeling that again, like I said, you have these different chapters, and here comes another situation, and this is for everyone. This is something that it wasn't just you; it was everyone in the country and in the world. You're an EMT or a paramedic at the time during 9/11. You know, not even to say what that was experience was like, but what did that do to your feeling of, like you said, that being in charge at that time, or feeling like, I'm in between, life and death in this situation where we really had no control.
Yeah. Yeah. So at the time, I was actually a lieutenant, right? So I went up through the ranks in
Right.
that department. And so before I get to 9/11, I want to just paint the picture of,
Okay.
like, so I had this life as a paramedic, and at that time, my life was taking three paths at the same time, right? So it was
Okay.
one path of my career,
Right.
and it was another path of trying to really, like, come to terms with my own vulnerability, and with my own fears and my own void and my own, like, everything that happened to me when I was a kid, and
Right.
and how I manifested that in my own life, in relationships, in abusive relationships, right? And then also being married. So, like, here I am, I'm running, like, now I'm a lieutenant. I'm in
Right.
charge of all these situations. I'm in charge of men. Like, now I'm the boss of, like, 80 guys that, like, answer to me. Meanwhile, when I go home, I have no say so in my home,
Okay.
right? So, like, that was kind of like a total,
Just total juxtaposition. You're
yes,
in two
a
different,
total
two both sides
paradox.
of the coin. Right.
Yes. And then the other path was going to therapy, going to, like, self-help retreats, trying to figure out what's wrong with me. because I still don't feel like I'm right. I still don't feel like I'm successful. I still don't feel like, it's just
Right.
unresolved issues, right? Okay. So we get all of that comes now 9/11, and the world stops.
Right.
The day of 9/11, I was a lieutenant. I was actually working in Brooklyn, and it was election day. It
Yep.
was the mayor's election day. And so I was actually working in the station. When you're a lieutenant in EMS in the fire department, you do 1 day in, 1 day out, 1 day in, 1 day out. So like the day before, I was out in the street. So now today is my in day. It's 9/11, and so
Okay.
it's election day. So I'm sitting there in the station, and my job in the station is to send people out, get the crews ready, get their vehicles ready, make sure they have their equipment, make sure they're on time, make sure that they have their safety gear, just all of that, and kind of like, remember Hill Street Blues?
Yeah. Roll call.
Remember? Exactly,
Yeah.
doing my roll call. And remember, be careful out there. That was like that.
Exactly.
Exactly. That was literally what I did when I was
Yeah.
inside. So, okay. So I do my roll call in the morning, and you had a 7 o'clock, a 6 o'clock roll call, a 7 o'clock, a 8 o'clock, and a 9 o'clock, right? Like that, because you stagger the crews.
Right.
And this happened at like 9:18 in the morning. Was
Mm-hmm.
like the first plane that hit, I believe it was around that time.
Right.
And so prior to that, maybe about a couple of months before that, there had been a small plane that had crashed into the Empire State Building.
Right. 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 Right.
Okay. So when it was actually a baseball player, it was like,
The guy for the Yankees.
yes, some baseball player. He had his own plane.
It was Corey Lytle. That's it.
Yes,
Yeah.
and he just crashed it into the Empire
Right.
State Building. And
Mhm.
so that was literally like maybe 4 or 5 months before that. And
Mhm.
so when that, at first, when I got that call, oh, listen, I need a crew because there's a plane into the World Trade Center. I'm like, oh, here it goes again. Another, like basically that's what we thought, right?
Right.
And
Right.
then obviously it was
What it
everything
was. Yeah.
that we could not have imagined. And so, that whole day I dispatch crews, dispatch crews, dispatch crews, dispatch crews. And as I'm learning the news of the day, I'm like, okay, I'm sending my guys to get killed.
Wow.
That's literally what I'm thinking.
Right.
And so it took me like about 21 hours before my first crew came back, and they were all full of dust.
Right.
And when I
Right.
saw them, I just hugged them, and I was like, "Oh my God, I thought I sent you to die." So it was very the uncertainty, right? And then also the movie Independence Day, right? Remember
Mhm.
when like they hit the White House, they hit the Pentagon, they hit like
Right.
in Independence Day, they had hit like all these spots.
Exactly.
So on that same day, it happened that way, and I was
Yep.
like, "Oh my God, this is it!" Like
Mhm.
I felt like this is Independence Day, like
Yeah.
So
We're all gone. Exactly.
yeah, exactly. And so after that, I spent many, many months at the site. My job, I was in charge of the makeshift morgue, which was trailers. They just put trailers up to be morgues. And
Right.
then for months, I just had my crews going into the pit with little golf carts, and then they
Wow.
would pull out body
Yeah.
parts,
Mm.
and then they would bring me the body parts in the morgue, and I'm sitting there with the ME, with the medical examiner, and we're identifying, trying to figure out what kind of body part this is. Is it is it a bone? Is it a leg? Is it an arm? What is it? And then you had to like identify a grid. You had to like put in the grid where was it found on that grid. So that way they can, kind of piece together who
it
is
might
this
be.
person,
Right.
I found a driver's license. One time I get a piece of leg with a piece of jean and a pocket. And in that pocket there's a driver's license.
Wow.
So at that point, see, this kind of job, you have to turn off your emotions. You have
Right.
to turn off you have to just be mechanical, right?
Right.
And
Understand.
so, in order for you to function, in order for
Absolutely.
you to survive, in order for you to get up and go back and do it again the next day, so you can't like, and here's the thing, we would leave for lunch and we would go to St. Paul's Chapel, which was the
Right.
church on the corner. That
Mhm.
was our respite. That was where they gave us soup and little like take a nap on a bench or whatever.
Right.
And outside of there were thousands of pictures,
Of people being
thousands
cared
of
for.
pictures. And Frank, here's the thing. Like I would walk by those pictures and I would look at all those faces, and then I would go back in the morgue and I would get these pieces of bodies and I would be putting those faces together,
Like that.
wondering, is this person or is that person, and those
Right.
faces would just like hovering around. It was just, but at the same time, like I said, you had to shut your brain off. You had to
Right.
shut
Right.
your emotions off. You had to just be mechanical and just do the job. You know, for someone who's a trauma survivor, for someone who's been molested, for someone who has seen their mother being beat with chains. Literally, this guy took chains, wrapped his chains around his hand and beat my mom with chains, right? For someone who has watched that, it's easy to shut off your feelings because that's the only way to survive. It's called dissociation,
Right.
right? It's called dissociation. And so I was the perfect person to do that job because I already
Had
had
that skill set of setting it
this
right.
skill of dissociation from way back, and that's why so many of my peers who
Right.
have been paramedics, they've been out there in the street, but this was just too much for them. This was another level for them.
Right. Right. So they didn't have the
And
tools. They didn't have the ability to shut it off the way you were able to.
yes, exactly. And I always wondered for years, this is the 20th anniversary. This year
Yes.
is 20 years.
20 years.
It took me, Frank, about, honestly, probably about 16, 17 years to even admit and actually seek help and seek some kind of support for my PTSD. Because I didn't even realize, since I had such a high threshold
Right. You figure
for
that it was
trauma,
necessary. Right.
since I had such a high threshold for trauma, I had not been able to see the effects that it was having on me. As opposed to so many of my other coworkers where it really showed and it hit them. And they were
Right.
able to understand that they needed support, right? Now, there's a book, it's called The Body Keeps the Score.
Okay.
Okay. The Body Keeps the Score. It's by Bessel van der Kolk. And this book I read about 3 years ago. And I understood from that is that there comes a time where somebody got to pay the piper,
Okay.
right? In terms of not dealing with trauma,
With-
in
Gotcha.
terms of disassociating, in terms of not realizing and not being, and not addressing the effects of trauma. And so you just get trauma from childhood, from racism, from capitalism, from, just from the world, right?
Right.
From the world itself, right? You get trauma from your parents being a drug addict, or your parents going to jail, or getting raped, or getting molested, or getting, like, all of these things that happen. And then you go into the workforce, and then you go into discrimination, or then you go into an abusive relationship, or then you go, and then you just trying to survive, and you
Just
just
trying to
got
get
your
through it.
blinders on, and you
Yep.
just trying to, like, you can't even deal with all that stuff that happened, because you already, the next thing's already coming at you, you know and you think that you're not, that you think that, oh, I'm strong like that. Like I said before, they took New York kids and they took them to a freaking war zone
They
in
figure we
in
go right with it.
Ireland, because we can handle it.
Hmm.
But at some point, according to this book that I read, which made total sense, because, at, like, 3 years ago, 4, I started having high blood pressure. I started having anxiety. I started gaining weight. I started having, like, all these things going on with my body that I never happened before.
Right.
And it's because you have to take care of yourself. At some
Right.
point, it's going to catch up to you. And
Absolutely. Like you
And
said, you, at
so,
some point you have to pay the piper. It
yeah,
comes. It comes to a head. Um, 2009, you start Milagros Day Worldwide. Why then? And how did things like CVC, and you started to mention that, influence, like, things that you did, like you have like you had boot camp retreat, you had, healing voices. Are those things that you grabbed from your past experiences to put into this, and basically talk about why that was the time to start this organization?
yeah, so I was still working in the fire department.
Hmm.
For so 2000, I left the fire department in 2013. So 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. For 4 years, I was doing both things at the same time. And then, like, I kind of left the limelight in the fire department, and I went to communications, dispatch, where I was working, like, the night shift, just to
Right.
kind of, because I had already, like, I felt like I I made my mark,
Hmm.
and now, like, I something else was getting my attention. Something else was
Okay.
getting my passion. Something
Right.
else was getting my, my energy. And that's when I started feeling like, okay, I'm transitioning into another project, another priority, you know, um another creation, right? And it was Milagros de Worldwide. And and what happened was that I was getting to the point where I was having a mental breakdown again, because of the body keeping the score, and I didn't know that. So,
Right.
like, I was starting to, like, have a mental breakdown with, you know, nothing was fulfilling. And I had a great life. Like, I mean, on the outside, I had a great life, right?
Right.
So, like,
Right.
I had a great job. I was making great money. I had influence. I had authority. I had respect. I had beautiful kids. I had a nice home. I had, like, everything was great. My relationship was terrible. My marriage was terrible. And that wasn't even because he was a horrible person. It was because we both came from trauma, and
Right.
neither one of us knew what to do with it, you know?
Gotcha.
And
Unresolved.
so,
Yep.
of course, you always hurt the one you love. So we ended up, you know, hurting each other, and so it was terrible. And so I ended up, I was literally considering checking into a mental hospital. And then I heard about this coaching program. So I said, well, let me see what this is about. And so I met this coach, and she asked me this one question, that if there was a group that I could help, who would it be? Like, because she was like, that's your purpose, right?
Right. Right.
Like, what's your purpose? And I was like, I don't know. What do you mean purpose? And she was like, well, if there was a group that you could support, that you could make a difference for, who would it be? And immediately I said, oh, I would help women that live through domestic violence. And so, boom, that's how Milagros came about, because my mom's name was Milagros.
Yes.
And Milagros means miracles.
Hmm.
So it was just perfect. And so, it's been 10 years. And within those 10 years, there have been hundreds of women and families. And as I mentioned before, the demographic is started widening more and more, because it's like,
Right.
okay, maybe I didn't live through domestic violence, but maybe my parents were drug addicts, or maybe my parents went to jail, or maybe, or maybe I was a child of 9/11.
Right. Which
Right?
is a whole. Yeah. Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Trauma. Or maybe, like, maybe my father got shot, or like all of these things. And then I started realizing domestic violence is just one.
An aspect. Right.
It's just one, like, manifestation of trauma. It's just one, like, outpouring. It's one result. It's
Right.
just one result of trauma, but there's so many results. And so we're not here to address the results. We're here to address the cause. We're here to address the core, right? And so, I'm not a therapist. I'm a life coach, but what I do have is my own personal journey. And what I do have is 25 years of research
Right.
in my own healing that
Right.
I've been able to put together into all of these programs. The Transformation Academy, Healing Voices, the boot camp, all of these programs that address who are you? Who are you really? Because you don't know who you are. And how I knew that is because when my mom finally left that abusive relationship,
Right.
she didn't know who she was. Like, these 6 months that she had of freedom before she went out in the street to try to save my little brother that was 4 years old, that ran in the street. My little brother ran in the street, and she ran after him and got killed by a truck. That's how my mom died. And so, talk about trauma. My two little brothers, they watched this happen. And so, like, in those 6 months, and maybe, who knows, maybe she was in the fog and she wasn't even looking at the freaking truck that was coming. Because like, you get deep into your head of trying to figure out who are you, what's next, what are you gonna do with your life, how are you gonna pay the bills, how are you gonna feed your kids,
Especially it's only been
right?
6 months. It's not like she had time to really develop any
Yeah,
kind of, plan or anything of
right.
that nature.
And what resources are out there? At that time in 1981, not much.
Right.
Because in 1981, when my mom died, nobody talked to me. Literally, there was not a conversation. How are you? How are you feeling? What are you
Right.
thinking? Nothing. That was perfect for my disassociation. Because you know what?
Mhm.
The day that I found out that my mom died,
Right.
do you know what I did, Frank? I went outside and learned how to roller skate. I was 14 years old. There was these kids outside roller skating. And the minute, like, literally, I got the phone call. I hung
Right.
up the phone and I walked outside. This is a movie, man. This is a freaking movie. Picture
That's
this, okay?
that was your coping mechanism or
I,
whatever it was at that time.
I hung up the phone and I walked outside and I saw these kids roller skating and I said, "Hey, can you teach me how to roller skate?" And this phone call was probably like around, I don't know, 10, 11 in the morning. And
Right.
until about maybe 7 p.m. at night, I was out there roller skate. By the end of that evening, I learned how to roller skate. From that day, I knew how to roller skate. So,
Wow.
the disassociation, right? And so, where was I? I lost my whole my whole train of thought.
No, we were just talking about the development of the program, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
Yeah.
And right. And so through that, when my mom, like for those 6 months, she didn't know who she is. So
Right.
that's who I wanted to address. Those were the women that I wanted to address.
That
Like,
void, that
yes,
learning who you are. Where do you go from here?
yes. From whatever trauma you went through, okay, now you're safe. Right? Now you're stable. Now you see the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? And it talks about you need food, shelter,
Mhm.
water, like those basic needs. Okay, now you have those basic needs. Now what? Now you
Right.
can think, where do you want to go? What do you want to create? What's your purpose? What's your passion? What's your talents? But what significance what's your legacy? So that's what we do.
That's amazing. I mean, that's amazing. But you're right. There's so many. You have to have some place where you can develop who you are after you've been lost for so long, and then you finally end up in a safe place, and that's great. But now what? How do I get back what I may have lost, or or what I need to become whole? Um, you talk about well, we talked about this. What is considered success when it comes to this? What who's determining what success is? People have so many different ideas of what success is for you, and for someone who maybe be coming out of a traumatic situation or trying to heal. Because we also said that you don't ever completely heal, because it's always there with you. It's what you do with it. But what do you define as success?
Yeah, this is a question I've been asking myself, Frank. Is the question that, at every stage of your life, I feel like you reevaluate that, right?
Right.
At every milestone, you reevaluate that. And so, when the organization made 10 years, it was bittersweet for me because it was like, okay, yes,
Next
I
step.
have I have the success stories. Like, I have so many success stories of women who have become authors, who have become chefs, who have become business owners, who have become, moms, who have become, I mean, you know, like filmmakers, who have
Mhm.
become performers, who have become journalists, who, I mean, literally, like, you name it.
Right.
We have in our community and our alumni, we have those success stories, right? So that's tangible. And at the same time, it was bittersweet because it's like, okay, the organization as a whole, as an entity, as a business, is still, after 10 years, still has not gotten off the ground. It still does not have salaries and,
Right.
facilities and, chapters and all these things, And so for a good, like, I mean, we just made our 10 years in 2019 per se.
Right.
In 2019 per se, however, legally, this is our 10th because our legal incorporation was
Right, right.
was 2011. So
Okay.
so legally, our 10th anniversary is this year.
Okay.
And so I'm getting to celebrate the 10 year for like 2 years, you know,
Yeah.
and it's giving, but it was bittersweet because it was like, okay, when do we get recognized? And like you
Right,
said before, I mean, we've been recognized. I got awards. I have a whole freaking shelf full of awards. I have proclamations. I
right,
have TV interviews. I mean, all the everything. But that hasn't, like, uh, in the civil rights movement, there was a statement that said that budget is a moral document.
okay. Yes. A lot of people don't understand that, but depending on what your morality is what you're going to put your money toward.
Right. Budget is the moral document. Okay. So if you like, and so that's been the bittersweet part. That's been the success versus failure
Right,
conversation that I've been having
right,
about this organization. And I just gotta keep it in perspective because when it comes to companies like Amazon, that is the biggest company in the world, and still in their first 10 years they still weren't making a profit.
right.
So
So
we
perspective is
still in
key.
the running. We still in the running.
Perspective is key. What are some of the things that are going on right now? I know you were talking about the Survivor Summit. You have some organizations that you're working with right now. You want to talk about that? Because I know you got to go soon.
Yes,
So
yes,
um,
sir. Well, thank you, Frank. This has been so amazing. I was so looking forward to this, and I'm so glad because we got to touch on so many great things, and actually like paint a picture of the whole trajectory of what
yeah,
brought me and what brought my organization to where it is today.
right,
And so where we're going, I mean, where we're going is the possibilities are endless because I have so many ideas. I have such a vision board and such a to-do list, right? But what we're working on right this minute is that we are all survivors of something,
okay,
and and that is interviewing women from all walks of life and putting together this series the same way
okay,
you and I are talking here. But the cool
right,
thing is, I'm not the one that's doing the interviews. My
okay,
alumni are the ones that are doing the interviews,
fantastic,
because one of the main skills that they get from going through our programs is public speaking, and it is interacting with the media and being able to share your message. And
right,
so it's really exciting that they're the ones that are doing these interviews.
that's fantastic.
And and yeah, so we're putting together like a whole hashtag. We are all SOS. We are all survivors of something. SOS, which also means
That's cool.
that
Okay,
which also means that when you've been through it, you know how to help somebody else through it.
absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it's amazing. Like I said, I've known you for so long, and I've watched, from the sidelines the things that you're doing. And I said to myself that when I do have this platform, however large or small it is, I want to make sure that I bring to light the people that I know that are making a difference, that are doing something, to impact their not just their community, but just the world in general. It's so important to to do something. It's so important to do something. Like you said, if you've been through something, you know how to help somebody else through it, and it's key to give of yourself in that manner. So I applaud you. I am so honored to have you as a friend for this long. We have some other mutual friends that I hope that we all get together soon, and kick around some old stories from back in the '80s. If you again, let's we'll talk about whoever the next mayor is, trying to get CVC or something
Yep.
like it back on board. Dawn, I hope you come back and update us as to what is going on. I would love to have you back again. And I'm sure that I will at some point, because I'm sure that there'll be some more things to talk about.
Yes.
But again, thank you so much for coming. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. I appreciate everybody. And this is Don Diaz. Milagros.org is the website. Go there, find out about it, donate. Um, it's important. Talk about it. Hopefully, when you watch this, share this, with everybody so they'll know what's going on. And Dawn, thank you, babe. I love what you're doing. I love you. And we'll talk soon.
Love you. Bye, Frank.
Take care.
Bye, everybody at Den City.
Bye. Bye. That was Dawn Diaz. And that, like I said, for me, one of the most important shows that I've had in some time. And, the most important show that I've had to date. So I am going to appreciate this, and I'm going to definitely put this up there as one of the top shows that I have done. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. Again, if you want to find out more information, if you're going through anything, if you're looking for an outlet to help yourself, this is the website, milagrosday.org. You can donate there. You can find out about their programs. You can find out about all the things that she has done in the past and what she has coming up going forward. You also have some companies that she's doing some work with, Coda Alliance and Global Sisterhood. We didn't get a chance to mention that, but I wanted to mention those two companies that she's also partners with in different programs. And you can always email us if you want some information at density tonight at gmail.com. And guys, I appreciate it. We have had a great show. I'm glad you came by. If you didn't come by, please watch it. It'll be, on my YouTube. It'll be on the Facebook page. Please share it, like it. It's an important topic. It's an important subject, and we all need to make sure we're doing our part for people that have been, through any type of traumatic event. Talk, find an outlet, find someone to talk with. Because, like she said, at some point you're going to pay the piper. At some point it's going to come to a head, and it's going to have to be addressed one way or the other. So I love you guys. I will see you next week, and be safe. Okay? Take care.
Wake up, everybody. I just wanna start a new day. Remember what I say. Remember what I say. Remember what I remember what I say. Remember what I say. Remember what I remember what I say. Remember what I say. Remember what I remember what I